Hello, Bob Tingelstad and Shane Brown. At the end of our PowerPoint deck that we have previously shared with the group, we planned on getting into a demo. So this is that peer group example that we had walked through in the slides. So remember, this was all Excel based, and it was just last year compared to this year. Now with our business analytics solution, we're able to do trending over multiple years of my construction company, in this case, Construction Inc., compared to the group average. This is one of the many visualizations that we are creating based on that data, and Shane is going to walk you through the benefits of it.
All right, so this is Shane Brown, and as Bob mentioned, I'm going to play the role of a CFO and presenting to a board who has asked me to take a harder look at our balance sheet, the effectiveness and the efficiency that we're deploying our balance sheet. And we're going to use some fairly traditional ratios and KPIs in working capital, stockholders' equity, relative to backlog, and look at some of those comparisons using these traditional ratios that usually look on a one-year basis, kind of in a microscope, in a vacuum. And we're going to compare those on a year-over-year basis, and we're going to compare them to our peer group average to see, do we want to set some targets here, and are we effectively deploying our working capital, our equity, and are we managing the risk we're taking? And so you can see in 2016, we're highlighted on an equity as a percentage of backlog, and we'll change that in a minute. But we can see our equity as a percentage of backlog is about 55%. So from that ratio, traditionally you would see this around the 20%, meaning we are leveraging our backlog. We're not keeping too much in the company to take risk, and it's also looking at, do we have enough backlog? And when we look at that, we say, well, we have grown our backlog by 10 million, and we're still pretty heavy in equity. Well, how does that play out when we look at it on a working capital basis? We can change our ratios here and compare that and say, okay, what does our working capital relative to backlog look like? Much closer to a more traditional 5-to-1 for in our example, looking at a heavy highway company, and relative to our peer group, we're even a little more leveraged. So looks like we're closer to where our peer group is and closer to where we've been historically on working capital. So we have to have some good questions to ask the company. Are we just are we building up our equipment? Is that why equity is much higher as a percent of backlog? And it'll send me a way to answer those questions and to say, do we want some targets? Do we have a target working capital relative to backlog? And also with equity, so we can make some good decisions on, are we tracking where we want to be from a sales development perspective, and are we tracking where we want to be from a risk acceptance? Are we keeping too much or too little in the company? Are we putting too much pressure on our bonding capacity? Or are we taking too much risk by keeping too much money in the company? So very powerful tool.
Good. And now I'm going to switch over to the financial dashboard, continue to play the role of the CFO, Construction Inc. And last time when I was in that same board meeting, I was asked, how are we doing on write-offs? I've heard our write-offs are around 10K per contract, and that didn't feel right. So the board was asking those kind of questions, and I was able to quickly pull this up and by searching contracts and highlighting that metric, and we could see with these quick line charts that our write-offs per contract are actually improving. We're down to just over 10,000, where in prior years we were actually higher, and we're 9K better this year than the peer group. So that satisfied the group for that conversation, and we decided that we really didn't need to do anything on that. Of course, we'd like to continue to improve, but there was no action steps that we really identified. I was happy that I didn't have to get back to them later on that information. But today, I'm interested in, our business is all about people. We have good, hardworking, talented people, but they're hard to find and hard to keep. And balancing new projects and full-time employees is something we're always keeping track of. So I know we have a lot of metrics per employee. So I'm going to just search on those and look at our variance to the peer group. You can see in the legend down here, the darker the blue, the higher the variance to the peer group. And something that just stands out to me, right out of the gate is our gross profit per employee in marketing is far lower than the peer group. So some of the questions when I go to my next peer group meeting are going to be things like, are we just heavy on our headcount and, we're not working very efficiently? Are we not being effective in our marketing, so we're not driving the gross profit that others are? Or are we just classifying some of our expenses in marketing differently? Also plan on talking with our marketing director to get their feedback before I go. But that's something that we've, again, layered on top of the basic Excel format that they had prior that allows me to quickly identify things that may be actionable. Thank you for your time.